I thought Miami did not play as far as execution wise. And this is a story of these two programs kind of side by side, kind of the issue I would say that hurt Miami in the regular season losses, and then came back just enough tonight in this national championship game to cost them in the end, but just not enough perfect execution out of this Miami team when they needed it most. You get into a third down situation, and there were two, I believe, two of them on this drive on my notes, and you get into that situation where and Indiana was running a lot of the stop routes as Chris Fowler called them, the easy access throws that Fernando Mendoza had right along the sideline. You're giving those up, and Miami was playing super soft in that regard. But I was okay with it because really you're trying to keep everything in front. You're trying to bet on your defensive line to get home and make plays. And in the second half, we really saw that took over in a sense for Miami, especially in that second quarter where Fernando Mendoza had 3 sacks, and those were on his all 3 of his dropbacks at one point in the second half, and you didn't see him get into any sort of rhythm in the second half. So you're betting that okay, if we limit them, we limit their explosives, we're going to be able to eventually get home on a sack and get home on a negative play. Miami had 6 tackles for loss. They had 3 sacks. Indiana had 1 tackle for loss and 1 sack on the night. And the sack was early in the game and early-ish in the game. I think that was that first, that 3 and out on the 3 straight pass plays that I was talking about. And instead, you get a penalty on pass interference. Frederic gets called on it, and he had kind of been handsy. He should have had an interception really on the field goal drive. Just it would have been a great play. It would have been a tough play to make, but those are ones you got to have at the same time as well. So they get the first down. They get into Miami territory with that, and then you're getting into a 2nd and 13, and then you're at 3rd and 12 because Indiana did a great job of kind of mixing up a run when you're in a usual passing situation. And I think that's something that's kind of slept on nationally as far as doing, especially if you're in maybe a 4-down territory. And I would argue that at that point in the game, maybe they were. But you get to 3rd and 12, and Miami forces an incompletion. Ruben Bain, one of your veteran leaders for this Miami team, is called for an offside, and you can't do that. You can't let that happen in that situation. One, you're Ruben Bain. I know you know better. You also have the ability to not need to necessarily get that jump on an offensive tackle that you worked all night long. And that allowed the down to be replayed, 3rd and 7. And, Kalen Black did what he did a lot of that night against Miami, and that was make big plays in terms of picking up first downs or having a really positive run. In this case, went for 20 yards, get down to the Miami 23, and then from there, you're just able to work enough into the Miami red zone, and then you capitalize. Indiana had 4 trips to the Miami red zone. They came away with 20 points. They went 2 for 2 as far as touchdown to field goal. They were perfect. Miami got down in the red zone once. They scored a touchdown. And, it was so, I don't want to say close, but it was close. Miami gets down there 3rd and 1. You're thinking, okay, will they get a stop defensively here and force another field goal? They don't. And Nowakowski runs it in for the 10-0 lead. And then this is where things get, you can look back on this decision and question it from Mario Cristobal. I look back on it and say, you've got to have maybe a better idea of what you're going to do in this scenario, because the next drive, Miami finally mounts an offensive attack. They go down the field. They get into Indiana territory. They're burning a good bit of clock off. Indiana is not necessarily going to get the ball back with any sort of major amount of time to make a move here. And you go 9 plays, 43 yards in 5 minutes and 40 seconds and kind of shorten the game. And it was a good thing. Defense kind of needed that. But then you trot the field goal kicker out there, Carter Davis, and he misses, right off the upright. And on a drive that I felt like Miami probably could have gone for it. again, they had gone for it earlier and picked it up by the hair on their chinny chin chin, and they didn't. It was a longer distance, 4th and 2, but that also opens up different options. And I just wonder, obviously, Mario Cristobal is going to want that one back, and so is Carter Davis. But you had a chance and an amount of time and timeouts to maybe go out there and get a look offensively and see if you like something, and then call timeout and not necessarily have to run a play. You could go out and see what they're going to come out in. And if you like it, then you could call timeout and say, okay, we like it. We're going to go. And I almost would have been fine with that, even though you're eating an extra timeout in a sense. But they end up going with the field goal unit. And again, off the right upright, had plenty of distance, not, not what you wanted. You come away down 10-0 at the half.